To Chitro Shando Tamo Nudo Yadha Dvaitam Brahmo Panashaditadapyasa Tanuba Yarantmantaryami Purushariti Sokshanksha Vibhava Shadaishwaryaya Purno Yariha Bhagavan Sasvayamayam Nachetanyat Krishna Jagati Paratatvam Paramiha Anarpita Charam Shirat Karunaya Vatirna Kalo Samarpayitumu Natachala Rasam Swabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dutikandamba Sandipita Sada Hridaya Kandare Spurutuva Shachinandana Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikriti Hladani Shaktirasmad Ekatmana Papibu Vipura Deha Bedam Katauto Chaitanyakyam Prakatamaduna Tadvayam Chaikyamaptam Radha Bhava Duti Subalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam Shri Radhaya Pranaya Mahima Kidrisho Vanayaiva Swadyo Yena Bhuta Madhurima Kidrisho Madhiya Sokyam Chasya Madanubhavata Kidrisham Veti Lobhat Tabhavadhya Samanjani Shachi Garbhasindo Harindo Om Agyantamirandasya Gyanajana Shalokaya Chakshunu Militam Nena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Nena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadha Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. So we'll try to do a little Katha this morning. Some reflections on Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in honor of his divine appearance day, which we are celebrating today. So as we always start off on Gaur Purnima, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. So Krishna is the transcendental Cupid, Kamadev. He's a lover, not a fighter. We used to have this saying growing up in school when talking about the pretty boys in school. So they didn't want to fight because it would mess up their face. Right? So Krishna, he's the Adi pretty boy. He's a lover, not a fighter. So when Krishna comes down as an avatar, he does not do the work of the avatar. So the work of the avatar we know, right? From Bhagavad Gita. Paritranaya sadhuna vinashaya chaduskritam. Dharma samstarpanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. The work of the avatar is to deliver the saintly and to kill the wicked and to reestablish the principles of dharma. For this reason, the avatars are appearing again and again. So the avatars are connected to Vishnu, who are concerned with universal maintenance. So when the universe is getting a little bit out of hand, the avatar descends to set it straight. But Krishna is a lover, not a fighter. So when he appears as avatar, he's not doing the work of the avatar. He's doing his own work as a lover and not as a fighter. And that work as a lover is naturally to distribute the love. That is his main work as an avatar in this world. So Sri Kaviraj Goswami has informed us of this, that when the Lord comes as a lover, he has his primary reasons for coming and his secondary reasons for coming. And both his primary reasons and secondary reasons are not connected to the work of the avatar. Again, the work of the avatar is connected to universal maintenance. So Krishna's primary and secondary reasons are not connected to that. So his primary reason as a lover is to taste love. That is his primary reason. Prema rasa niryasa karitaya swadana. He wants to taste prema rasa, the prema rasa. And tasting that prema rasa, his secondary reason or external reason is to distribute that love to others by preaching it. Rag marg bhakti loke karite prachana. He wants to preach the path of Raganuga Bhakti, by which people can themselves come to the experience of prema rasa. So that is his external purpose, means for others, the jivas of this world. And his primary purpose means for himself. So for this reason, Krishna is given two nomenclatures, two names. Rasika Shekhara, because of his tasting prema rasa, and Parama Karuna, because of his distributing the path of rock mark. You understand? Rasika Shekhara means basically the connoisseur of the rasas. All the nuances of love, he likes to taste all of that. So he's called as Rasika Shekhara. And he's called as supremely merciful, Parama Karuna, because he distributes the path of rock mark, by which even ordinary jivas may be invited to the experience of prema rasa. So this is his external purpose. This is his purpose, his internal and external purpose for coming, Krishna. But during his pastimes, the way he thought it would work is that he would enjoy his leelas in this world, because it's described that his leelas, like Rasa Leela, they destroyed all the misfortunes of the world. That's naturally. And he thought after he disappears from this world, people would hear those pastimes, and that way they would gradually be pulled into that world. In the same way that people watch the movies and they get pulled into the world of the movie. So you hear the pastime, you get pulled into the pastime. And this way he was thinking, I'll taste prema and I'll distribute the prema like this. But he was very dissatisfied with both this work. And in terms of his tasting prema rasa, and also in terms of his distributing bhakti through the path of rock mark, he found it unsatisfactory. Even though he is Rasika Shekhara and Parama Karuna for doing this, he is called as such, still he felt it unsatisfactory. He did not really fully fulfill his primary purpose or his secondary purpose to a satisfying degree. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Let's take it from the external position first. If you have to distribute the love of the resonance of Braja, that was the type of love he was trying to distribute, then you would have to embody that love yourself, isn't it? Otherwise, how you will distribute, how you will talk about it. Just like devotees now in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we don't talk about Braja Bhav that much. You may have noticed that. We ourselves don't talk about it, and we don't hear that much about it also. You may have observed that. We talk about yoga, Ashtanga yoga, how to be a good person, how to be the best version of yourself, how to have good relationships with your wife and children. Actually, from a Gaudiya Vaishnava perspective, in one sense, this is all nonsense. It is related to the temporary body. Why we don't hear so much topics of prema and Braj Bhav? That's because we don't embody it. So how you will speak about something that you're not subjectively experiencing, it becomes irrelevant to you, isn't it? That's the way that works. So you speak about whatever you're subjectively preoccupied with, that is what you're going to speak about. So how you will distribute love if you're not subjectively experiencing that? You understand? This is a difficulty. So we say preach Hare Krishna. We want to Hare Krishna, we want to preach. But what are we preaching? Okay, we say preach Maha Mantra. So Mahaprabhu also did that. And to satisfy his external purposes, he wants to preach Braj Bhav. So he took the position of the Yuga Avatar. You understand? Yuga Avatar is the form of Vishnu usually. Because Yuga Avatar is coming every Yuga. But Krishna doesn't come every Kali Yuga. He only comes once in a day of Brahma. So in all the other Kali Yugas, that happened, some form of Vishnu is coming and distributing Yuga Dharma. You understand? So the Vishnus also preach Hare Krishna, right? And we also preach Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But like Vishnu avatars, they don't have the subjective experience of a Brijvasi. So they're Hare Krishna, only able to give liberation. There are 5 types of liberation are there. So by doing Hare Krishna, you can get those 5 types of liberation. So the devotees, we are also preaching Hare Krishna, but what are people getting from that Hare Krishna?
Practically or theoretically?
Both practically or theoretically. Maybe nothing also. But we are making here is simple that Mahaprabhu, to satisfy his purpose of distributing Braj Bhav, he took the position of the Yuga Avatar, which is normally Vishnu. And Kaviraj Goswami tells us that he wove a wreath of prema and harinam and gave it to the world so that they could get the Braj Bhav. You understand? But he also felt dissatisfied with that work. That's the point. Why? Because he wasn't really experiencing Braj Bhav from the position of a Brijvasi. He was experiencing Braj Bhav from the position of Krishna. You understand? So there's a different experience. Because in love, there's 3 factors in love, right? There's the object of love, and there's the subject of love, and then there's the love. 3 things are there, right? So in Krishna Prema Bhakti, the subject of love is Krishna. And this, the object of love is Krishna. He is called as the Vishaya Vigraha. He's the object of love. And the subject of love, called as Ashraya Vigraha, or the vessel of love, is the Brijvasi, the devotee. Okay? And then there's the love, the exchange of love. So Krishna is experiencing prema rasa from the position of the Vishaya. You understand? He's not experiencing love from the position of the Ashraya. But he's trying to distribute the love of the Ashraya, right? Because it is so tasty for him. But he's experiencing the love from the position of the Vishaya. So how he will be effectively able to distribute the love from the position of the Ashraya if he's standing in the position of the Vishaya, right? That's the problem. That's the difficulty. So this is why he's not satisfied with that work also. His work of distribution, because he distributed love of God. Certainly he did that work. And certainly it was successful, but not to his satisfaction, because he was distributed from the position of the Vishaya. So he thought, if I have to distribute this really effectively, I have to distribute it from the position of the Ashraya. So this is one of the unique qualities of God, that he can take on the full experience of the subject. This is unique. This is his unique quality. In the material world, this is a sidebar, a philosophical sidebar. In the material world, the jivas, we always are alone at the end of the day, right? Because no one can fully understand us from our subjective position. So we always are alone, actually, at the end of the day. You can try to reveal your position to others, and we do that with friends and loved ones, but they can never fully understand what we're going through subjectively. At best, and I don't know if this even happens, but at best, they can empathize with us. So you know what is their empathy? Empathy means that you hear their story and you think of how you would react in that situation and how it would impact you. Then you superimpose your own subjective experience onto the person, and then you call it as empathy, right?
Yeah.
But what are you empathizing with? Basically how you would feel in that situation. That is the empathy. So you can never empathize with someone from their position. That is impossible because of our finitude. We're too finite. We don't have that ability, right? So that's why empathy can even be irritating to the subject. It's like, wow, I really empathize. Ugh. Because they don't really know what you're going through. So you have to suffer alone. You have to bear your own burden at the end of the day, isn't it? That's just a fact of life. Just like now, people, they always cry about how they're suffering in the material world, but that is their burden to bear at the end of the day. We can try to uplift them. And we do with our good advice, our spirituality, whatever it is at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, they have to become reconciled to that by themselves. There's nothing else anyone can really do because they're suffering alone. But there's only one entity that's able to understand fully what they're going through subjectively from the subjective position, and that is God. So in his feature as the Paramatma, he is there. So he understands the full extent of the subjective, you could say abstractly, he's not experiencing that, but he understands the full extent of the subjective position of what you're going through. That is his special quality. That is Krishna's quality. And a small part of that quality is being performed by the Paramatma in the material world, the super soul. But it is Krishna's quality. So seeing his dilemma that he was trying to distribute prema from the position of the Vishaya, and that was not very satisfactory to him. So he used his special quality of his to be able to take the position of a subject and fully embody the subjective experience of another living entity, namely his dear devotee, of course, Srimati Radhika. And then only after becoming a Brijbasi by subjectively was he able to do even the external, accomplish his external purposes of distributing Braj Bhakti. You understand? Otherwise, without assuming that internal position, then he cannot distribute effectively or satisfactorily to his own satisfaction that prema bhakti. So as a general rule, so this verse we recited some of these Mangasharam verses. Radha Bhava Duti Suvalitam Krishna Nomi Swarupam. This is one of the verses we recited. So it says, although my obeisances to Krishna Swarup, Krishna, but my obeisance to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Although he is Krishna Swarup, so he's a form of Krishna, but he assumed the bhava and the duty of Srimati Radhika, Radha Bhava Duti Suvalita. He had to lose himself to find himself as a subject of prema, right? So this becomes the work of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, especially the conditioned souls who are coming to Krishna consciousness. We have to lose ourselves to find ourselves. Right? There's a generic principle, actually. Even if you think about, there's a nice quote that I like from Mark Twain or something. I forget who. But it says, there's nothing noble in being better than your fellow man. True nobility is being better than your former self. There's a nice quote there. This quote applies to Gaudiya Vaishnavism also. If you want to be a Brijabasi, then you have to lose your sense of being a self rooted in matter. Manashashtan Indriyani Pakratistani Karshati, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. We're struggling with the mind and senses which are rooted in Prakriti. So we identify with that, of course. So we're rooted in matter. We have a self-identity that is rooted in Prakriti. And we don't want to lose that self. So if you don't lose that self, how can you find your potential, right? It's just like, there's another quote. I don't know, all these quotes are coming in my mind, like new agey things. I apologize, but it's conditioned. So what can be done? But our potential is on the other side of fear, right? So we all have the potential to become like Brijbasi, but there's a threshold of fear that has to be crossed. So that threshold of fear is losing the self that is rooted in Prakriti. So it is a very scary thing. We don't want to do it, actually. We're not agreeable to it. We don't find ourselves very easily amenable to it. So what we do is take on we try to superimpose a devotional ego over that self that we don't want to lose. That's what's going on in the Hare Krishna movement also. Because we're a little bit afraid. Not a little bit, we're very afraid, actually. So we just take, just like before we were devotees, we were some rascal, and has some persona that we use. So okay, we threw out that persona because it was problematic. Now let's take the devotional one. Also false ego. We just superimpose a false, like a false devotional ego over the self that we don't want to lose. And then we can be comfortable devotees, like David Madhava Prabhu says, Krishna comfortable. That's such a good phrase. It's so funny. Krishna comfortable. That's what we all do. I mean, I'm into it too. I'm not gonna lie. Krishna comfortable. But you have to lose yourself to find yourself. Means lose your self rooted in Prakriti to find yourself rooted in love. So that's what sadhana bhakti is supposed to be. Sadhana is like the chrysalis where you dissolve the self-rooted hypocrisy so that it can reemerge out of the chrysalis in sadhya bhakti, and you find yourself in love of God. Okay? So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does it first. Or you say Krishna does it first, it's Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Radha Bhava Suvalitam, Krishna Nomi Sarupam. He loses his Krishna Sarup. Now, ontologically, he can't lose himself in that sense, because he's an eternal entity. Our self-rooted hypocrisy is not eternal. So we have to actually like lose it, drop it, and find ourselves differently situated and a potentiality, which we have to potentiate by having the courage to step over the threshold of fear and embrace it. So he can't lose himself in the ontological sense. But that self becomes wrapped in the bhava and duty of Radha. So he in effect loses himself as the Vishaya to find himself as the Ashraya. And in the experience of the Ashraya, he can now perform the work effectively of distributing Krishna consciousness, which accomplishes his external purpose as Krishna, of distributing the path of Rakanuga Bhakti and the access to Braj Bhakti in this way. Okay, he does it first. So this is the purport of that verse according to Kaviraj Goswami, that in order to teach Prema Bhakti, he had to first embrace Prema Bhakti. So he had to lose himself in Prema Bhakti. You can say that lose himself in the chrysalis of Prema and come out of the chrysalis as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then he was able to teach Prema Bhakti. So our lover, Sri Krishna, is himself setting the example for all his future generations. You want to be Braj Bhakti? Otherwise, without this, according to Krishna at least, without this, he said, there are actually no meaning to the material world. Even if you're doing Vaidhi Bhakti, actually. So he said Vaidhi Bhakti doesn't attract him or control him. It's not so attractive. So in Krishna's view, now we're talking about Krishna. So like I said, he's not really God. He's not a fighter. He's a lover. So for him, he said there's no value to the whole material cosmos without this, in his view. This is what Kaviraj Goswami informs us in the voice of Krishna. So he wants to distribute meaning to the world, the only meaning that he feels has meaning. So many living, I was walking with one devotee yesterday, and I asked him, what is the purpose of life? So he devotee, so Krishna Prema. And then I asked him, what is your purpose in life? Then he became confused. What is your purpose in life? So Mahaprabhu wants to distribute that purpose to us. So he had to lose himself to find himself. And then he was able to distribute that purpose. So he has to lose himself. So that part is there also. So that becomes his internal reason. The internal reason is to lose himself in Prema Bhakti. External reason is to distribute it, but first he has to accomplish his internal purpose. In a sense, the two are rooted, they're always together. So you cannot do the external part if you're not doing the internal part. So Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we have to keep that in mind also. We are very into preaching, but what about the inner part so that your preaching can have the Shakti to do that work? So he does this first part has to go on also, the lose himself part. So there, Kaviraj Goswami informs us that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had, three purposes in that work. First thing is, the three purposes, inner reasons. I just given the outer reasons. Outer reasons, distribute Braj Bhakti. So he took the position of the Yuga avatar in order to do that. First part, distribute Braj Bhav. The third reason is, external reason is Advaita Charya calls for him. Come on. These people out here are wilding out. And that was like 500 years ago. It wasn't even that bad compared to now. They're like just eating and having a good life. This is terrible. Come down, Krishna, come down. So Mahaprabhu is bound to the devotee. So these are the three external reasons. The internal reasons, You know how to articulate the three internal reasons? What's the first internal reason?
How Srimati Radharani appreciates his beauty.
How Srimati Radharani appreciates his beauty. That's the second part. I'll give you that for the second part.
First one was how Srimati Radharani relishes loving him.
Relishes loving him. That's kind of the third part.
The third part.
Actually, if you read the verse,
it sounds very similar.
Yeah, it sounds all very similar. So you become very confused, actually.
Yeah.
So we'll look at. I'll share my screen for this one. So here's the Mahaprabhu losing himself point. I'm going to share my screen. You can see the verse here from Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Sri Radhaya Pranaya Mahima Ki Drisho Vanayaiva. So this first line, oops, please, let me put this down here. So Sri Radhaya, this is Srimati Radharani, Pranaya Mahima, the glory of her love. Kedrisha Vanayaiva. He wanted to understand what kind of love is this? That is in her exclusively. Vanayaiva. Vanayaiva. It exists only in her exclusively. So Pranaya Mahima means the glory of love. He wants to understand that. Understand? Pranaya Mahima. Mahima means glory. So he wants to understand the glory of pranaya. So there's a spectrum of pranayas there. So all devotees have pranaya for Krishna, but there's a spectrum, but she's at the top of the list. And the last verse, if you study, we're not going to go. It's so much theology is overwhelming. It's just like subtle and detailed and confusing. But in any case, Krishna has his internal energy, and the essence of the internal energy is prema, and the essence of prema is bhava. And bhava taken to the highest point is called Mahabhava. And the form of that Mahabhava is Srimati Radhika. So she at the top of the list of pranaya. All the devotees have pranaya, that have love. And they're all glorious. But she at the top of the list. So pranaya mahima kidrisha vanaya eva. He wanted to understand the glory of the love that exists exclusively in Srimati Radhika. Why? Because that love is, Kaviraj Goswami makes a verse, he becomes like a dancing pupil before that love. So it's subduing him. So he wants to understand the glory of the love. Again, he's understanding it to some degree from the position of the Vishaya. He understands how he becomes a dancing pupil. And the teacher is Radha's love. So he understands that. He understands her love, but from the position of the Vishaya. So he wants to understand the glory of her love from the position of the subject. So of course he has a unique ability to do that, being God. So he can do that. So this is his first reason, internal reason. Then the second internal reason, Swadyo Yena Bhuta Madhurima, Kridisho Va Madhya. So Krishna, he's having the Aswadya. Abhuta Madhurima. He has, Madhurima means sweetness. He has a certain sweetness is there, and his abhuta, it is astonishing. Everyone in the mature world is ultimately looking for beauty. So beauty is related to the Ananda feature. What is the value of existence without Ananda? People will kill themselves, actually. That's a fact. They will kill themselves without the experience of it. So that means Ananda is actually the force that's moving all the jivas around, the quest for it at least. That is a force. Even people going after power and so on, that is also for the same purpose only. There's a nice verse in the Upanishad Taittiriya. I don't know the shloka. I know it comes in Taittiriya Upanishad. It says only for this Ananda, the entities move. That means if they shall conclude that there's no way to get it, they will just they basically cease to exist. They commit the suicide or just rot until they die. So everyone is looking for Ananda, or you can say beauty, sweetness, beauty. And meaning of the word is like that, Madhurima. So this Madhurima is abhuta. It is actually astonishing because everyone's moving because of it. That itself is astonishing. That is not sufficient enough to just exist, but your existence must be qualified by beauty. Otherwise, what's the point? So Krishna, but the beauty that is there in Krishna compared to all the forms of Godhead, which speak of matter, is extremely astonishing. It is so astonishing that even other forms of Godhead want to see, like Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu did a big, I don't know, we cannot say nonsense because he's God, but he was like kidnapping all the sons. What was it? Was it not a Sandipani Muni? Was it Sandipani Muni? Whose sons was kidnapping Brahmana's sons? There was one Brahmana who was there. Every time the boy would get born, he would just die, apparently, just disappear. So finally, Arjuna was there. Arjuna and Krishna went and visited this Brahmana. So Arjuna made a heavy declaration. I declare that the next son you have will, because he was not wanting to have any son after. He was like, forget it, this is too much pain.
And he went to the king saying, you're the king, you should protect me.
Yeah, so the Brahmana went to the king. So Arjuna made a declaration, I promise that your next son will live, otherwise I'll kill myself. He made a promise like this. Kshatriyas can't break their vow. So finally, Brahma was all right. He agreed. Had a son, disappeared. And Arjuna searched here, high and low. He went to Yamloka. Everywhere he was going, couldn't find the child. So he was about to commit suicide. He was about to kill himself under his vow. So Krishna was like, hold up. We can't allow this to happen. So they went to planet Mahavishnu. I forget the name of the planet. They went to planet Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu had took all the boys. I'll give them back. But he wanted to see Krishna. So he's God himself. What is it lacking in him? But he himself wanted to see Krishna. So Krishna's Madhurima is very astonishing. That's what point I'm trying to make. It is so astonishing that God himself wants to understand it. What to speak of Mahavishnu, Krishna himself also wanted to understand his Madhurima. So I think in Lalita Madhava book, Rupa Goswami, this is Krishna's in Dwarka. So one time Krishna is looking at his reflection on the floor. The floor is made out of like more than marble, some like special, beautiful crystal type thing. And it's giving nice reflection. So Krishna was like, somehow he was on the floor, I don't know, floor, maybe it was a pillar, I don't remember actually. And he suddenly sees a reflection, he becomes stunned. Who is this beautiful person? He becomes so stunned looking at his own beauty. And then he got desired that I want to understand my own beauty, Madhurima, which is very astonishing. Even for Krishna, it is astonishing. But I want to understand it from the position of Sri Radha. Because the nature of love is that the love gives you access to a degree of Madhurima, a degree of beauty. Otherwise, you cannot have access to the full scope of beauty. Just like in the material world, we are also after beauty. So because we are ignorant as anything, so the only scope of beauty we have access to is illicit sex. And very low. And we say, this is beautiful, this is beautiful. I'm sorry, Shyam Sundari has a camera on. So we were there in Kali together a few years back. And there was one lady there, she was talking about when she has sex with her husband, she goes into the samadhi. So Shyam Sundari, we were laughing on that for like 15 minutes continuously. It was just like so crazy for us, But the lady we're in ignorance. So the full scope of beauty we have access to is a very low thing. But if you become enlightened, you have access to greater beauty. So if you have, Brahman realization, you have access to Brahmananda. That is also not very nice for bhaktas, but relatively speaking, it's like going from negative integers to zero. So zero becomes positive. And then there's degrees in the positive integers of beauty. But Radha's love has access to the full scope of it. So he wants to understand his own Madhurima, Abhuta Madhurima, Krishna. He has an astonishing Madhurima in him, and he wants to aswadya, means he wants to taste that. But there's only one type of love that has access to that. So that is Radha's love. So the second reason is to taste the Madhurima, the beauty or the sweetness that only her love, which is the first point, has access to. So this becomes the second internal reason. So they're connected. That's why it's hard to, when you read the English verse, it gets like, it's like all blended together. So the first is to understand the glory of her love, and then to understand the sweetness of himself that love has access to, and only that love has access to. That's the second reason. Okay? Sokyam chasya maranubhavata kridisham viti. This one means he anubhavata. This is where anubhava is used to describe realization. Like, we use like bhakti, parisha, anubhava, virakti. If you do bhakti nicely, you'll experience devotion. And then parisha anubhava means you'll get anubhav of God. It's a word they use for realization, where you're having the realization of God. So God himself wants to have anubhava, an experience too. What is the experience? The experience of the happiness from tasting the sweetness that love has access to. So when you get the access, there's a certain experience with that access. Sokyam means happiness. Sokyam chasha ma anubhavata kidrisham vaiti. So the happiness that comes from accessing the madhurima that the love gives access to. So her pranaya is like a key opening the door, and inside the door there is the madhurima, let's say like a fruit, and then when you eat the fruit you get a certain happiness from that. So his third reason is you want to taste that happiness that comes from the madhurima, his own madhurima, that key is opening up, giving access to. That's the third reason. So he has lobhat. Lobhat means greed. These are the three greeds of Krishna. He's a greedy person. And also, the devotee on the path of Rock Marg is supposed to be a greedy person too. So our own Krishna is showing that you have to also become greedy. So this is why, there's a difference between regular devotion and devotion on the path of Rock is greediness. So when you're just a status quo devotee, there's no greed there. So you're happy to just finish your rounds. That is very nice, actually. It's also very difficult for us when you have no greed. So you become happy just to finish the rounds. There's no greed. You have no prayojan that you're so greedy to have. You're prepared to die for that. Just like in Srila Radha Maharaj's book, Journey Home, he forget the context because it's been a while since I read that, but he was saying if you have nothing you're willing to die for, then what are you living for? So, you have so much greed for some goal in your life that you're willing to die for that. Just like, sorry for this, but I always give this example. This Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, part 3, when I was a kid. So the villain in the movie, they're after this like rare diamond. So at the end of the movie, the protagonists are the Ninja Turtles. So they're fighting with the villain. And the villain has the crystal, and they need the crystal to get back to their timeline. Because in part 3, they go back in time to Japan, and then they get back to their timeline. So they need this crystal for the machine. But the villain's having it for his own purposes. So they're fighting on the precipice. And finally, and Leonardo, he's the leader of the Ninja Turtles, he's getting his butt handed to him basically by this villain. So finally, he's just like, all right, we're going to be stuck here. So what he does, the villain's he takes his sword and just knocks the crystal out of the villain's hand over the precipice. And immediately, without thinking, the villain just jumps off the cliff to grab the crystal, and he dies. Now, obviously, it's like utter foolishness. Like, what is he doing? Obviously, he's going to kill himself. But that crystal was so important for him that he jumped off the precipice and willing to die. So taking that in the positive sense, what are we willing to jump off a precipice for? Here's a better example and more devotional. Prabhupada disciple Haladini Shakti, their story is there with her. They were preaching in Africa, and the African whatever, Hudlams or whatever, they got all the devotees, they were about to kill all the devotees. And they were going to release Haladini Shakti on the women. They weren't going to kill the women, they were just going to kill the men for preaching. well, and they kind of like apparently liked Lady Shakti also. So she was like, challenge them. No, you can't kill them. Absolutely not. So she stood in front of the gun and they like, get out of the way. We'll kill you. So do what you gotta do. And they killed her. So she was like, that was the hill that she was willing to die on.
Wow.
So what hill are we willing to die on? So right at the present moment, no hill, because we have no greed for spirituality. So Krishna is showing that if you want what I wanted this thing too, so I had to get the greed for it. So he has these three greeds are there. So we also have to have greed on the path of Raganuga Bhakti at least to satisfy our Lord. So he's setting an example for us also in this way. By these three greeds, he's able to satisfy his desire. So tabhavadhya samajanishachi garbhasendo harindu. So he's offering obeisances unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is appearing like the moon out of the ocean of out of the ocean of Radha's love. How is this part translated? He's appearing like out of the womb of Mother Shachi. And her is poetically described because the moon appears out of the milk ocean, according to the Bhagavatam. So Mother Shachi is being compared like the milk ocean. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was like the moon appearing out of that milk ocean, endowed with these three powerful emotions. Tat Bhava Adya, her Bhava, her emotions and so on, etc. So yeah, this is kind of, I like this Lobot. These are the three greeds. Everyone needs some greed. That's not is also telling us, right? The bad qualities like lust, anger, and so on, they can be transmuted if directed at Lord Hari. So he says, for the greed part, he says we should become greedy for hearing Hari Katha, I think he says. Because that Hari Katha we hear it, Krishna Katha, then we might get the greed for spirituality. And then we can enter into the subjective realm of a Brijbasi and then also assist Mahaprabhu and his and the external purposes of distributing that subjective experience to others. We are suffering a lot in Kali Yuga, so these esoteric things seem so far removed from us. So we always tend to prioritize the immediate concern, survival, which is, I'm down with that. Like something about not going hungry is appealing to me. So I kind of, I see the appeal of that. It's appealing to me too. I don't want to go hungry. Inflation is getting bad and this, that, and the other. And it's one devotee on my Bhakti Center class yesterday, she was describing this, that when I'm doing good, then all this spirituality sounds very wonderful. But when I'm not doing good, then it's just irrelevant and impractical.
It's a very honest reflection.
Yeah, these are newer people, so they don't feel any intimidation to say. And I'm also very open because they've challenged me a lot in the first classes. And I was like, yeah, I totally resonate with that too. I was like, oh, cool. You like that? Not getting offended or anything. And that, because there's one particular one, she's like very kind of heavy, but she's very open also. So I said, yeah, this is true. I said, problem is we function according to our old paradigm. And that old paradigm is the belief that by solving the external problem, we'll solve our problem. This is the old paradigm. So when we hear about the spirituality, which is just addressing the inner stuff, then it seems far removed because the old paradigm has arrested our psyche too profoundly. So we have to make some maturation. Not even in Gaudiya Vaishnava, just as a general rule, that your problems are never solved, even if you solve your chapati problem, your place of residence problem. Then another sort of issue comes up. So you can become an elite. They have all sorts of nasty problems. It's very scary. So the only problem can be solved by addressing the inner thing. So the esoteric point I'm making, all this stuff is quite esoteric. It seems very far removed. We're very concerned about the practical. But actually, we would suggest that only by the embrace of the esoteric can we solve our external problem. Because once you change your inner world, then you change your outer experience. So that means your problem is solved, even without directly addressing it. So in this way, we should not dismiss, we should not, what's the word I'm looking for? Denigrate, that's also that's a good word. Yeah, we should not minimize, yeah, that's more in the direction I'm looking at. Minimize the value of the pursuit of beauty, even when you're caught in the midst of like survival and all of that. Otherwise, what's the point in living? Okay, you survive, bravo, but no beauty in your life. What is the point? Give me suicide, or put me back in the Matrix, like the character from the first one. What was his name?
Neo?
Not Neo, the criminal one who betrayed the team. Sight
Oh,
this.
yeah.
So what was his name?
Yeah.
You've never seen? This is a
You gotta solve this external problem.
Mukunda, he hadn't seen for you, but I was always giving examples from the Matrix because they're very relevant. The first movie, not the two after. So he's finally saw it like years after, because I kept saying it's a good movie for philosophy.
Watch it tomorrow night.
All right.
So there in the movie, one of the characters, he's been unplugged from the illusion, but the real existence is so dreadful. So he decides to betray the team so he can get plugged back into the illusion. So he betrays the team and all that. So yeah, what is the point of existence without beauty? Why fight for survival if there's no beauty in it? So we should, huh?
What are you fighting for then?
Yeah, what are you fighting for? Okay, you eat and pass stool and you pay your bills and then commit suicide. So even though this is esoteric and it does seem far removed, the point is that we shouldn't minimize its value in changing our life situation by changing our inner world. Anyway, so here's some, my attempt at a interesting Guru Katha, which is extremely hard to talk about. It's esoteric nature, it's beyond my qualification. And I tried to make it meaningful and interesting also. And it's 9:00, so we'll stop here. Anyone wants to say anything or add anything to this? Looks like there's something in the chat box. Tamir says, it seems preaching is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's external reason, not internal. It is his external reason. That is what Kaviraj Goswami clearly informs us. But the point is that that reason is not disconnected from the internal reason. So that's why when you read chapter 4, where he's describing the internal reasons of Mahaprabhu, is it chapter 4? Yeah, chapter 4. It's very confusing actually, because he's saying, I'm going to talk about the internal reasons, but then Kaviraj Goswami keeps bringing up the external reasons. So you get like, wait, is he talking? Like where's the demarcation line? Like for years I was confused about it. So I'm like, where's it? He just said he's talking about the internal reason, then he brings up the external reason again. He keeps doing that. So finally, because the two are intimately related, actually, that's what I tried to explain just now. There's an intimate relationship to the two. If he wants to distribute Braj Bhav, which is the love of the subject of Prema Bhakti, not the object of Prema Bhakti. So he has to assume the subjective position in order to do that. So that's his internal reason is the assumption of the subjective position. That makes his external purpose possible. So they're intimately related. Although there's the external reasons to distribute love, but now you have to take that position. So they're intimately related.
Which comes first?
Which comes first?
Is it that Krishna sees Radharani's love and says, oh, this is so nice, I really want to experience this, and then when he experiences it, he says, I have to share this with everyone.
Yeah.
Or is it I want to share the Braj Bhav with everyone in the world, but in order to do that, I must first experience it.
Yeah. But what comes first is the internal. In one sense, you can say the helping the world is incidental. Because he's preoccupied with the internal world always, right? He never leaves Vrindavan. He's always with his associates doing pastimes. So he comes down as an avatar. So avatars, they have some functional relationship to others. So he's also just, okay, I also do something, but I'm gonna do it in my own way. I'm not gonna do the work of Vishnu. I'm gonna do the work of a lover. I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover. So I also do, what I'm gonna do is just should be Rag Marg. But his primary motivation is tasting Prema Rasa. That's the engine that's moving everything. So then he sees, his associates, particularly the gopis and particularly Sri Radha. And then he wants to do all that, assume that, and then, okay, I'll distribute this also. You can, in one sense, say that preaching is really the outpouring of the subjective experience of love, in his case. In the same way that when you're happy, if you'll notice this actually, if you're feeling happiness inside, the tendency is to share it. You want people to participate in that. You also come to the party. This is so nice. I took this DMT. It's so nice. You also take it. Whatever it is, whatever concept people have of happiness, the tendency is to invite others to participate in that. So you can say the external reason is really the outpouring of the internal experience, which is naturally like magnanimous. Ananda is naturally magnanimous. That's why it keeps expanding. It has a natural magnanimity to it. You also come, you also come, you also experience.
So a follow-up on that. So there's this idea that we have our own realizations and experiences, like whatever our deep most inner world is, they're like, we don't necessarily reveal that to everyone, right? We may not even reveal it to even those like extremely close to us because like of the deepness of how intimate that is. Versus Krishna, when he comes to Lord Chaitanya, he's revealing such deep, like esoteric, like very intimate things in his relationship with Sri Radha, when he's experiencing this love. So is it that Krishna's doing this because he's Krishna and he can do this, or is it not to be taken as an example for like how we interact with everyone else?
Yeah, generally it's the deep stuff you keep to yourself. It's like you don't talk about what you're doing with your spouse in the bedroom, a very intimate thing. So you're meeting God in the bedroom of samadhi and this deep connection with God. So yeah, that's between you and God. So those sorts of things you may not share so much. Mahaprabhu also didn't share so much. He shared with Ramananda Rai, Sarup Damodar Goswami. They wrote journals. Then when they left the world, the journals were found. Kaviraj Goswami, student of the Goswamis, and Goswamis also spoke from those notebooks they call Karachas, I think, notebooks. So then it became revealed after they departed. And the acharyas are presenting to the world because they are servants of Mahaprabhu's purpose, Mano Abhishtam, his desire for the people of the world also. So you're going to need a little insight into that. So the acharyas, they curate I'm sure there's a lot of stuff they didn't share also. They curate what they shared to the world, so we may have a chance also. So also if we come to some level of depth ever in our Krishna consciousness, this life or some future life, then probably I suspect a lot of the deep stuff will not be shared necessarily during your life. But such people often keep journals, they have meditations, and these things get discovered by close followers. And that way the culture continues. Otherwise, the river of love would dry up if no one told anything. If no one told absolutely anything, then it would dry up. Narottam Das Thakur is also telling, Prem Bhakti Chandrika don't tell these things, but then he himself wrote Prarthana. But very intimate. Telling about his service as a gopi and all these things.
Yeah.
Even though he himself giving instruction, don't tell, he himself telling a lot, quite a bit. Because otherwise a river of love would dry up.
Also.
Yeah, Andrew Prabhu taking Narottam Das Thakur's example, he tells us in the book, because he knew this criticism will come. You shouldn't share such a blah, blah, blah. So he took Narottam Das Thakur's example and said, I'm also sharing. Otherwise, the river of love will dry up. Mahaprabhu's river of love, there's one prayer, and I think it comes in Prarthana. I don't, Prarthana I'm praying, but I don't know. But Narottam Das Thakur, he said, those who don't want to hear this Prem Katha, may I not see their faces. You know, he's like real heavy. I don't even want to see the faces of those who do not want to hear this Prem Katha. So if the river, how's the river of love to stay flowing if no one tells anything about it? Of course, he said the Goswamis have told, Kaviraj Goswami has told in Chaitanya Charitamrita, what need for it anymore? No, always going to be need. Every generation requires a mystic or two, at least. Otherwise, the river will dry up. People will forget. Forgetfulness is our disease, after all. So we'll forget. So in this way, maybe you don't share intimately, provided we even have such a contact in this life. You may not share maybe in your life so much detail, maybe some indicators to closer followers or friends. And then later they discover, just like even Rupa Goswami and BRS, which is like he's like talking about the tattva of rasa, more than like personal stuff. But even in that, he says, I've written this book for the joy of my friends. In his Mangala Charana, at the end of his Mangala Charana, in the very outset, he said, I've written this book, which is mostly a tattva book, for the joy of my friends. And probably that was a spirit for a lot of them who will understand such things also. So they're writing for each other, you know, and they devote relative, but then they leave the world, so the books are staying. So someone finds them and somehow the movement can go on. Okay, Harisham's going to say something. There's a couple other things here.
I also have a quick question. Well, actually, maybe it's not a quick question, but oftentimes it's said that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give Braj Bhakti, and within Braj Bhakti he came to give the Madhurya Rasa, and within the Madhurya Rasa he came to give the love of the gopis, and within that he came to give Radha Dasyam. However, this point about Radha Dasyam is not so explicit in the CC, and furthermore, his primary preoccupation was, as you pointed out, relishing the beauty of Radha's love and really experiencing Radha's love, not so much, Radha Dasyam, not so much servitude to Srimati Radharani. He was directly approaching Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani. So why is it that, devotees, advanced devotees will often say that actually what Mahaprabhu came to really give is Radha Dasyam when it's not directly mentioned in the CC, nor was that his primary trajectory?
I don't know all the tattva behind this and all the historical arguments that go into all of this. But basic answer I can understand intuitively is because of the Goswamis literatures. So all the Goswamis, they are manjaris. And so their books are the primary books for Gaudiya Vaishnavas cultivating their own inner world. So because the Gaudiyas who are responsible for the distribution of the philosophy and the information by which one can cultivate the inner world, they're all situated as manjaris. So it becomes, for the tradition, more or less self-evident that this is the highest thing. And also by another sort of logic, that Krishna is interested in the service of Radha, her happiness. And the manjaris are able to serve Radha, exclusively, without any attention on anyone else, and do what even he may not be able to do in relationship to her. Just like this verse, Krishna says, those who say they are my devotees are not my devotees. But those who say they are devotees of my devotees, those are my real devotees. And then Sridhar Maharaj, speaking on this, says that Krishna thinks that I want to serve my devotees, but they will not allow it. They do not allow it. But then they'll accept service from others. The service I want to do, they will not allow, but they'll allow these other fellows to do it. And therefore I become indebted to those other fellows because they're doing what I myself was denied and giving pleasure. So in this way, by so much logic, Shastra Yupicha Nipuna. You know, the Uttam Adhikari, sadhana is described as expert in logic and Shastra. So by this sort of logic, they'll say Manjari Bhav is highest thing. Because Krishna is interested only in her happiness. And they're directly serving her happiness. So that's a pretty good argument. It's pretty solid logic. Otherwise, yeah, I know as far as the scripturals, even the scriptures of the Goswamis, there's no term for Manjari Bhav. There's a one word, Bhavolas Reti, which is described as a Sanchari Bhav and not as a Sthayi Bhav. So if you have like Manjari Bhav, that's your fixed Bhav, Sthayi Bhav. But the Bhavolas Reti, which is supposed to be, you know, synonymous with Manjari Bhava, is described as a Sanchari Bhava by Rupa Goswami. So
I like Bhava that has to do with like your love for a devotee in the Dham in Vrindavan.
But Bhavolas Reti has basically become synonymous with Manjari Bhav. So they take it as, it's been taken as a Sthayi Bhav of Radha Dasya. That's how it's accepted by the tradition. Most people give me arguments, or they argue like that. Even though Rupa Goswami is calling it as a Sanchari Bhav, not as a Sthayi Bhav. So, and that's why people go back and forth arguing, you know, ad infinitum about it. They're probably not into that sort of thing. But yeah, you have a logic also. Well, Mahaprabhu is relishing, you know, Radha's Bhav, not Radha Dasya. So how do you say that he's attributing that? So in this way, people will get argument. Anarpita charanchira konanaya vatirnakalo samarpayitum unatajala rasa swabhakti shriya. So he wanted to distribute his own bhakti, swabhakti shriya, unata ujjala rasa. So he wanted the ujjala rasa means a kanjaka rasa, shining very brilliantly or brightly. So a very broad term. So in that way, all possibilities are there. And according to your ruchi, yata karma yata ruchi, Krishna says it to Uddhava. He's speaking about relationship to conditioned souls, but it probably applies here also. The conditioned souls, according to what they're doing, what they like, they say that is the siddhanta. Yata karma yata ruchi. So similarly within bhakti, according to your ruchi, you'll make a case for that. And, you know, both will be having compelling case. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the case that's going to be the most compelling is the one that matches your taste, the one that you have taste for. And other arguments would be more or less inconsequential.
You don't care at that point.
Yeah.
You have your ruchi.
I mean, you can't mandate a person's ruchi. So therefore, this verse from the first chapter of the 7th canto, some worship by kama, some worship by fear and envy, some by friendship. So, you know, in the verse, in the Sanskrit of the verse is basically saying you can worship in this way because you can't mandate it. You can't mandate someone worshiping with this feeling or that feeling or the other one. It can't be mandated. They're just showing the possibilities are there.
It's like we've been told what's not bhakti.
Yeah.
Other than that, whatever is within the realm of bhakti is just right.
Yeah. So we'll follow your bliss. I like that phrase a lot. Joseph Campbell. Follow your bliss, your ruchi, and see where it takes you. A few other questions here. We'll just read them. Sham Gopi is saying, this may be a stupid question. Does Krishna only want to relish or experience the love that Radharani experiences in Madhurya Bhav? Well, he's primarily interested in that. Is he not desirous of understanding what Nanda, Jasoda feel, being parents for Krishna, or what Sridham, Sudam feel, being Krishna's friends? Is it because Madhurya includes all the rasas? Yeah, that's how you probably reconcile that. That was my intuitive answer to that question.
But in Chaitanya Bhagavatam and CC, many times he actually does take on other rasas as well to relish. Remember, he becomes Rukmini at one point.
In Chaitanya Bhagavatam, he takes on other positions. Like he becomes like a Lakshmi, like Rukmini, and it's relishing them. Yeah.
Varahadev one time.
Yeah, Varahadev, Nrsimhadev. So you can make a case like that. But anyway, he wants to. Basically, Krishna only thinks of Radha, and Radha only thinks of Krishna. That's what's going on. And then all the other forms of Godhead are really like just an angle of her love at the end of the day. If you really think about it, because she is the Haladini Shakti personified. So all love is, and the essence of Haladini Shakti is prema. So in one sense, their love is just a kind of angle included within her love. So Radha and Krishna are like musk and scent, or fire and heat. So they're basically wrapped up in each other. So others are included, not discounted, but it's very clear what he's into, according to these verses at least. Shamsaki says, when a devotee attains prema, do they experience the same bhav that Lord Chaitanya feels? No. Well, Lord experience is superlative and no one can experience that, yes. Even the experience of Mahaprabhu are extraordinary, particularly his ecstasies in Gambhira. They're like too much, actually, you know. For a conditioned mind to even hear it, I'm like, this, I don't know, we never share this in a public space practically. Mahaprabhu perspiring blood and jumping in the air, and all his limbs become disconnected and being held together only by the skin, and all sorts of ecstatic transformation that even Radha doesn't have. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is like a very interesting reality or tattva for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Only he can experience that. Thankfully. I'm not trying to highlight that. Samir says that means the Sri Prabhupada's books external, we need to read Prabhupada's books internal. Okay, Tamir's always got something, yeah, cheeky like that. Shamsaki, we hear that to get Lord Krishna's mercy, one has to go through Gauranga. I never understand what this literally means. I kind of understood it as hearing Gaur Leela, because Gauranga Mahaprabhu is wrapped up in Krishna and Braj. So if you hear Gaur Leela, then what will happen to you is that you become immersed in Braja. So in that sense, you have to get Gaur's mercy to get Krishna's mercy. Otherwise, you may see, aside from taking birth in Braj, it's very hard to maybe even connect to Krishna's Leela. Because he's also Bhagavan, so many actors are very extraordinary. Lifting Govardhan Hill, you know, kind of seems like mythology. And if you read even the loving pastimes, we don't have, because we're not expert in Sanskrit and poetry, we don't have so much access to what we're hearing. It's just like if you hear classical music and you don't know classical music, then it just sounds like undifferentiated sound. It all sounds the same to you, more or less. But for someone who's classically trained, it's like, wow, this detail, that nuance, they have so much access. So when you hear the stories from Bhagavatam, but we don't know poetry. And Srimad, Tim Kendall especially filled with so much poetry, we don't have so much, it's like undifferentiated sound, basically. So, you know, it's like you read it, it's like, oh yeah, this cute, beautiful story. But if you read Mahaprabhu Leela, of course, the Goswami Granthas also, then naturally they're giving more access to what's going on there. There's tattva explanations, of course, and particularly when they start talking about Mahaprabhu's absorption. So if you keep hearing that, then there might be some hope that you'll end up in Vrindavan Dham. So that's kind of how I understand that. They may have other reasons. And follow up to Mirapuru's question, I heard that karma is performed in two conditions: when one feels unsatisfied, unhappy, and empty. Second is when one is too full. Jivas perform action because they want to achieve something, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is overflowing with love and happiness that he wants to share. Is this correct? Yes. And Mother Gail, you have a question.
Yeah, it's just about the order in which we state Lord Chaitanya's internal reasons for coming. Like the first one is he wants to experience the love that Radharani feels. Second, he wants to experience, I think the second one is the one he wants to experience the happiness.
No, the sweetness. His own astonishing sweetness he wants to taste, that only that love gives access to. And the third one is the happiness. Think about I think my analogy is good. I never used it before. Maybe it's off also, but I think it's good for now. The love is like the key. The astonishing sweetness is like the fruit. And then the happiness comes from eating the fruit, the experience of that eating of the fruit. So with the key, he gets access to tasting the apple, and then the happiness of tasting the apple. These are the three desires.
Okay. Okay, my wheels are turning slowly because when we say the sweetness of tasting the apple, which is the sweetness of tasting her love, right?
Yes.
Sometimes what we hear is he wants to experience what Radharani experiences when she experiences his qualities. So his qualities is the same as what? Which one of them?
His qualities is the same as the sweetness, abhuta madhurima. So some translators, the qualities, in him, the astonishing qualities that exist in him. So to taste those qualities. So that will be related to the second one, the second phrase.
Okay, so let me see. Going by your analogy again, the key gives you access to the apple, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So that's the love.
Yeah, the key is the love. Yes.
Yeah. That's Radharani's love for Krishna.
Yes.
And then, so when she is experiencing that love, that somehow enables her to experience his qualities.
Yes. The love allows her to taste the apple.
Yes. Right. Love and name. And then
after tasting the apple, you have a certain experience from that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you feel happy. So that's the third one. Wow, that was a fantastic.
Because again, another way I hear it sometimes is that she experiences the happiness of Krishna's reciprocation, which is Krishna's love for her. So the three things, the way I hear, and it's a little bit easier for me, is Lord Chaitanya, or Krishna, he wants to experience the love that Radharani experiences for Krishna. He wants to experience the love that he wants to experience the love that Krishna has for Radharani, which is his own love, and the qualities.
Yeah, so it gets confusing. That's why I said this verse has always been confusing. But just look at the phrases from the actual shlokas. The first one says pranaya mahima. I'm sharing this shloka on the screen. So pranaya mahima means the glory of love that exists exclusively in Radha, Shri Radhaya, Vanaya Eva. So that's the first phrase, the glory of the love. The second phrase is abhuta madhurima, which means the astonishing madhurima, the astonishing sweetness. Aswadya means to taste, the astonishing sweetness.
Mm-hmm.
That's the second phrase. And the third phrase is sokyam chasha mad anubhavata, to experience the happiness that comes from the tasting of that sweetness in him. So, by the three phrases are there. They're kind of.
Yeah, so that sweetness in him, that's what gets translated sometimes as Krishna's love for Radharani.
Yeah, so that makes it confusing. So let's keep it simple.
Actually, that was easier for me.
Yeah, pranaya mahima means the glory of her love. And then abhuta madhurima means to take aswadyaha. Yena abhuta means tasting the sweetness of his quality.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it means. So Abhuta means the astonishing sweetness that's in him. So the astonishing sweetness that's in him, this is where they bring in the qualities.
Yes.
He has all these wonderful qualities. That's how I think Prabhupada's translation puts it like that too here. So all these wonderful qualities that exist in Krishna, and as I was describing in the class, you know, certain love gives access to a certain degree of Krishna's quality. But the highest degree of his qualities is accessible only to the highest love. So her love, the glory of her love, gives access to that highest of qualities.
Yes.
And the third one is after tasting that, because the second phrase says aswadya, they're tasting those qualities. Then it produces a sort of, you know, experience, sokyam, happiness, ma anubhavata, the experience of a certain happiness from tasting that. So these are the three phrases used. So you see, you'll go and look at the verse and see.
Okay, but even after this explanation, you know, there is the reciprocation that Radharani experiences from Krishna for her love. Which I would think is that number 3, you know. He reciprocates with her love. And the happiness that she experiences from that reciprocation seems to be number 3.
Maybe you could probably make a case for that. That might be okay.
You know, so for me, it's easy if I think, you know, there's her love for him, his love for her.
No, so that part is not mentioned. So that part is not mentioned.
Her love for him? I mean, his love for her?
His love for her. That is not mentioned directly. But like I said, you can say the happiness
of experiencing his love.
This verse is all about Krishna, right? And why he comes as Mahaprabhu, right? So he wants to understand everything related to Radha. That's what the verse is saying. So first, understanding her love, understanding the access of his own qualities that love gives, and the experience that gives. So maybe you can make a case for the experience part. The experience is the experience of the reciprocation of a certain quality of Krishna. So that is extra explanation. That may work. You go and check out Kaviraj Goswami's explanation of this verse in chapter 4 also. And you can develop your idea there.
Okay, so what was that verse? 4 what?
Well, this is the 4th verse of the Mangalacharan. Excuse me, the 6th verse of the Mangalacharan, but it's discussed in chapter 4, the internal reasons. I think he starts discussing it in verse 101. Adi Lila chapter 4, verse 101 is where he begins. He says, first I'm going to indicate the meaning and then I'm going to discuss the verse. So he starts the indication of the meaning, I think, in verse 101.
But the verse that you just had on the screen was what?
That's verse 6 of the chapter 1 of Adi Lila.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't have any commentary until you get to the chapter 4. So that's where you'll see everything. So you can develop your idea there. Try to make some cases. Good meditation, Gorpanima.
But you don't often hear this, that, you know, he...
Like I said, I hear devotees explain it in so many ways that's confusing.
Okay.
So for years and years and years, I'm hearing devotees like and explain it as like, I don't know what you're saying, bro. I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about. So it finally started to click for me a little bit last year when I sat down with the verse myself for the first time for an extended period of time. So it started to click for me. Then I realized devotees maybe adding a lot of phrases that was causing the confusion for me. Okay, happy Gorpanima. Good luck with your fasting if you've been fasting, and the remembrance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Let us pray for his mercy on this day that we can become some sort of Gaudiya Vaishnava and assist him in his Audarya Lila of distributing Krishna consciousness to the people of the world. Hari Om Tat Sat. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki Jai. Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki Jai. Shri Go Premanandi. Hari Bolo. Hari Bolo.